गुड इवनिंग गाइस, कैसे हैं सब? चैप्टर पढ़ रहे हैं? नहीं सर, और क्लासेस भी लगा रहे हैं। चैप्टर आपके साथ ही पढ़ रहे हैं, वैसे पढ़ने का टाइम ही नहीं मिलता है ना? कहाँ सर? पकौड़े खाए, लड्डू खाए? ये तुम्हारे यहाँ बारिश ही नहीं हुई? अच्छा, आई होप you all got chapter 6, sorry, 7 notes. That case study we discussed for practice and the notes. I hope you all got that. Pathak ji, you asked me in the previous session. I hope you are able to download it from the portal. Enjoying weather. वेदर ही बहुत कंफ्यूज है इस टाइम पे, कभी सर्दी कभी गर्मी। आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट नॉर्थ। जस्ट अ सेकेंड। ओके, हाउ इज द वेदर एट योर प्लेस? बारिश का वेदर है बट हुई नहीं दिल्ली में। अच्छा, चलो बारिश का वेदर तो है, इट्स स्टिल गुड। I don't know, when during my student days, I would always love when it was a gray type of weather जो थोड़े आर्कटिक एरियाज में होता है, या आपके ये फार नॉर्दर्न एरियाज में होता है ना, ग्रेइश टाइप वेदर। आई ऑलवेज यूज टू लाइक दैट वेदर, नॉट हॉट और सनी वेदर। आई डोंट नो व्हाई। अच्छा पाठक जी, so soon you will get it. I uploaded them just yesterday. There was some technical error at my end, so I suppose you will get it by tomorrow or by latest by Monday. सिद्धांशु का ऑसम वेदर, हाँ, क्लाउडी इन दिल्ली। थोड़े बादल पंजाब वाली साइड भी भेज दो। बहुत गर्मी पड़ रही है पंजाब में। चलिए, ओके। सो एनी डाउट्स फ्रॉम द प्रीवियस चैप्टर, सॉरी प्रीवियस सेशन? भूमिका इज आस्किंग सर व्हाट इज डिसएग्रीगेशन? भूमिका, डिसएग्रीगेशन इफ यू गो बाय लिटरल मीनिंग और गूगल मीनिंग ना, डिसएग्रीगेशन का अगर आप वर्ड उसका मीनिंग करो तो इट्स लाइक, यू नो, व्हेन यू अग्रीगेट, आप जोड़ते हैं, है ना, सबको जोड़ के बनाते हैं। डिसएग्रीगेट मीन्स अलग अलग करना। सो व्हेन यू डिसएग्रीगेट इनटू, यू नो, components or subcomponents, like when you divide a particular item into components or components, that is known as disaggregation. Okay, right. Okay. सैनी साहब, somewhere near Ludhiana. Yeah, Akshay. Chapter 6, you have got it. Himanshu was asking for chapter 7. You'll get that. Acha, any more questions from the previous session? I suppose this chapter is a bit easier. Chapter 6 was really technical. I know it sometimes get a bit tough for students to understand the chapter and even to memorize the concepts and all. Chapter 7 a bit easier, and chapter 8 is the easiest, I suppose. So if there are no more doubts from the previous session, should we proceed ahead? Right? Surely. So we left over here techniques available as substantive analytical procedures. So if you love to do statistics, that was really interesting. The mean, median, deviations, standard deviations, and all trend analysis, interpolation, extrapolation. People who are from direct entry, they might know about these statistical techniques. People who are from foundation route, you might have done that in your statistics subject, quant subject in foundation. So I suppose no one here is alien to the concept of these statistical techniques, right? We have trend analysis, we have ratio analysis, my favorite ratio analysis, reasonable tests, and structural modeling. So this ratio analysis is one of your important chapters in your FM subject as well, and it's one of the most interesting, topics. Design of a substantive analytical procedure. What were the substantive analytical procedures? When we used analytical procedures in test of details, substantive analytical procedure is limited only by the availability of reliable data. See, you're testing the details, financial statements, assertions, and all. The data needs to be reliable. You can no you there is no point in working upon unreliable data, the draft data which is not yet final, or it is subject to some adjustments and all. So it is the basic ground that when you are going to apply some procedure which is analytical in nature, the data has to be reliable. Reliable as in आप उस पर विश्वास कर सकें. That is it. जो है सो है. You remember Caius? क्या था वो? CRs, right? Confidentiality, integrity, availability, and और क्या था CRs में? याद है? मुझे भूल गया. बताइए. कॉन्फिडेंशियलिटी, इंटीग्रिटी, अवेलेबिलिटी एंड. तुम्हारे पिछले चैप्टर छोड़ने वाला नहीं हूं मैं, साथ साथ पूछता रहूंगा बीच में. क्या था सियाज, बताना. कॉन्फिडेंशियलिटी, इंटीग्रिटी, अवेलेबिलिटी, ये क्या था? अरे ये पूछ रहा हूं मैं, ये क्या था? दिस वाज सिक्योरिटी ऑफ डेटा, राइट? सो design is limited only by the availability of reliable data and the experience and creativity of the audit team. Substantive analytical procedures generally take one of the following forms. Good, Darshan, good. Thick. Right. What is that? Trend analysis. Trend analysis is a commonly used technique. It is a comparison of current data with prior period balance or with a trend in two or more prior period balances. What was it? You used to draw graphs like this. The trend. This could also be the trend. Or like this. Trend analysis. Figures over here, and you got the trend. The auditor evaluates whether the current balance of an account moves in line with the trend established with previous balances for that account, or based on an understanding of factors that may cause the account to change. Turnover was increasing at the rate of 10%, 15%, 20%. It's been that same trend since the past 5 years. In this year, it has just increased by 5%. or there's a decline in the turnover by 2%. What could be the reason? Is the current balance following the trend already set? And trend you could take intra firm trend as well as inter firm trend, industry trend भी देख सकते हैं आप. तो आप ट्रेंड एनालिसिस लगाइए और सोचिए अभी जस्ट रिसेंटली कौन सा ऐसा ईयर था जहां पे आपको लगा होगा अभी ट्रेंड में फॉल आया होगा, ट्रेंड डिक्लाइन किया हो गया होगा. In the past few years, which year could have seen a downward trend throughout the world in many of the industries? What could it be? Which year could it be? बताइए मेरे को. Yeah, good Himanshu. Basically 2020, the financial year 2021. So many industry, the almost 80 to 90% of the trade was hit. A company could show a turnover till 10 crores and it had fallen to 3 crores or 2 crores. What were the most impacted, businesses? The food points. I was just having a conversation with my friend the other day and I told him मुझे तो 2021 में पता चला that मेरे शहर में भी इतने सारे eating points हैं जब मैं Zomato पे देखता था, because there was no movement allowed, right? And many people started businesses from their homes after lifting of lockdown and restrictions. So I was like, I could know only about these 4 to 5 restaurants or eating points, but when I serve through Zomato, now it's like it's multiplied. After that, new models of business emerged. In other words, trend analysis implies analyzing account fluctuations by current year, comparing current year to prior information and also to information derived over several years. It could be a trend comparing with 2 years. See, I have taken 2 years. You could take many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4. As many periods as you want to set up a trend and check whether it fits the trend or not. You might have done linear equations and linear inequations. What was that? A trend 2x plus 3y is equal to 6. What would you do? This was a trend and fit your figures into this trend. Trends are usually represented by linear equations or inequations. That was trend analysis. Yes, transportation. Yes, Akshay. So, practically when we try to relate things, we understand more of our academic concepts. Transportation was hit. Really nice. Okay. Moving ahead. Example. The auditor may compare the salary paid by the company during the year under audit with the salary paid by the company for several earlier years. There may be some percentage increase in the salary expense over the years. However, an unusual increase in such expense amount may indicate that fraudulent payments are being made to fake employees. So see, I'll draw a trend. I draw a trend. Suddenly, this was a salary increase. So at this point, this year, 2023, salary was increasing at a gradual rate. Suddenly, at this point in 2024, current year, salary increased to see the the increase in salary. So when auditor uses trend analysis and he finds an unusual fluctuation, he could unearth fraudulent payments or fake payments, dummy workers, XYZ, anyone, Suresh, Ramesh, Akbar, Anthony, Amar Akbar Anthony, yeah, like your partners, Rekha, Jaya, Sushma, सबके नाम पे उन्होंने पेमेंट डाल रखे हैं. And actually these are binami persons, I know, binam, these persons don't exist. So just to show some more expenses to deflate the profits, cash expenses, cash salaries shown to them. The auditor could unearth this as well. Now coming to the second one after trend analysis is a ratio analysis. So what do? You take up elements from the balance sheet or profit and loss and just use them as numerator, denominators, and get into some relationships. Ratio analysis is useful for analyzing asset and liability accounts as well as revenue and expense accounts. So that's balance sheet and that's profit and loss. An individual balance sheet account is difficult to predict on its own, but obvious when you are unable to compare, right? When you are right, Mohit, fictitious persons. When you are on, how do you compare if you have just one set of data? Either you need set from a different period within the same year or previous years. But its relationship to another account is often more predictable. So we can get ratios. How is it working? What kind of ratios? Like debtors velocity. What is that? How far are debtors changing, moving? Debtors velocity, creditors velocity, stock velocity. स्टॉक की मूवमेंट कैसी है? पुराना स्टॉक निकल रहा है, नया स्टॉक आ रहा है, फिर पुराना स्टॉक सेल हो रहा है, नया आ रहा है. इट्स गुड. क्रेडिटर्स की पेमेंट बढ़िया हो रही है, हम टाइम पे पेमेंट कर रहे हैं, डेटर्स की पेमेंट हमारे टाइम पे आ रही है. दीज ऑल टेल अस द वर्क, द operational position of the business. Then you have your other ratios like return on capital employed, GP, NP. Ratios can also be compared over time or to ratios of separate entities within the group or with the ratios of other companies in the same industry. You can compare it with the industry trend as well. What is the change at the industry level? What is the change at the industry level? For example, see, last year my GP was 20%. This year it is 25%. The industry rate this year is 20%. Industry had made a profit of 20% this year. If I talk about average profit made by the industry, I've made 25%. So what is it? The change of 5 over 20 into 100. I've made 25% more profit than industry. Right? Okay, you'll get confused. Let us see. I made 25% profit. Industry trend is 20. 5% more profit, compared it to the industry on the basis of ratios. We want to get how much in ratios, then I calculated 25. Financial ratios may include trade receivables or inventory turnover, freight expense as a percentage of sales revenue. You can get, plausible relationship we discussed on the first day. Wherever you could find a relationship, you can get a ratio. The statutory auditor can review the gross profit ratio of the company for the year under audit. The auditor can further compare such GP ratio with GP ratio of company in the earlier years or GP ratio of other companies in the same industry for the year under audit, and could work upon the reasons behind fluctuations, whether your client is performing well or your client is not performing well. What is the reason behind that? ठीक, चलिए. Reasonable test, the third one. Unlike trend analysis, this analytical procedure does not rely on events of prior periods, but upon non-financial data for the audit period under consideration. For example, occupancy rates to estimate rental income, or interest rates to estimate interest income or expense. Simple, like in hotels, what was the occupancy rate? How many times was a hotel overbooked, underbooked? Or like I told you about the interest on FD, rate of interest लगा के आप interest देखते हैं. Current, the repo rate could have changed if your rate of interest is being affected by of loans, or if this is being affected by the RBI's rate, then it could change. You cannot compare it to previous years. How would you compare it with previous years? यहाँ पे दिमाग लगाना है, reason, logic. आप figures के साथ नहीं खेल सकते यहाँ पे, because it depends upon policies. लास्ट ईयर एफडी का रेट 5% था, इस टाइम आरबीआई की कुछ पॉलिसीज की वजह से एफडी का रेट 7.5% हो गया. आप ये ऑडिट ऑब्जेक्शन नहीं उठा सकते 2.5% बढ़ के से गया. हाउ कुड इट इंक्रीज बाय 2.5%? पॉलिसी है भाई. यहाँ पे ट्रेंड का कोई वैल्यू नहीं आएगा. यहाँ पे ट्रेंड कैसे लगा सकते हैं? दिस इज एन एक्सेप्शन. ठीक, इसमें ट्रेंड यू कैन नॉट एस्टैब्लिश, बिकॉज ये इंक्रीज भी हो सकता है, डिक्रीज भी हो सकता है. These tests are generally more applicable to income statement accounts and certain accrual or prepayment accounts. In other words, these tests are made by reviewing the relationship of certain account balances to other balances for reasonable of accounts. Certain account balances like interest to other balances like balance of FD in balance sheet. Interest, you find it in profit and loss account, and FD you find in balance sheet. For example, interest expense against interest bearing obligations, your debentures, your trade interest, you are paying interest to your creditors, bank interest. ठीक, we are paying bank interest. For example, your loans rate is dependent upon RBI's repo rate. No, home loans, for take example of home loans, although home loans won't find any place as an example over here in business, but still, you know, there are certain kind of business loans as well where the rates fluctuate, keep on increasing, decreasing as per the RBI policies. If they keep on increasing, decreasing as per RBI, then you cannot establish a trend. Raw material consumption to production quantity, wastage and scrap percentage against production and raw material consumption quantity. So what is it? It could increase, decrease, although you could set up a trend, but this is not a permanent feature. Okay. Now, work in progress based on issued materials and sales. Yeah, it is not talking about the monetary value. It is talking about the quantity over here. There are normal losses, abnormal losses as well. Sales discount and commission against sales volume. See, again, it will depend. Sales discount and commissions against, it is dependent upon sales volume and not on any trend. The commission and sales discount. Rental revenues based upon occupancy of premises. Now, what is structural modeling? A modeling tool constructs a statistical model from financial or non-financial data of prior accounting periods to predict current account balances. Linear regression. You all have read about correlation regression. आप लोगों को correlation regression पता है? Have you guys read about done questions related to correlation regression in your graduation or foundation? You remember regression lines we used to develop linear equations, x on y, y on x. These were the regression lines, regression coefficients, bxy, byx. So that is an example of structural modeling. To get to current balances, you develop a regression equation, like it says, linear regression. You put in parameters in that equation and get values for current period.
Using historical data, you develop a regression equation, you put current parameters in that, and you get values for current period. ठीक? Okay, chaliye. Analytical procedures used as substantive tests. When designing and performing substantive analytical procedures, either alone or in combination with test of details as substantive procedures, as per essay 30, what was 315? 315 was understanding the entity and the risk assessment. 330 was to develop response to these assessed risks. Now, developing procedures for test of details as well as your substantive analytical procedures. While designing and performing them, you should take care of certain factors. Yes, Darshan. So what are these factors? Determining the suitability of analytical procedure, evaluating the reliability of data being used, developing an expectation, and determining acceptable difference. So you use analytical procedures. For example, we are using GP. We are calculating GP. We'll check whether the trading account is reliable. We'll develop an expectation that the trend says the GP has been increasing at the rate of 2%, 15, 17, 19. It could be 20, 21, 23, somewhere over here. We have developed an expectation. But to my amaze, the GP came to be 18%. So difference of 3%. Can I accept this difference, or do I need to go into detail to find the reasons behind this difference? What is my level of accepting the difference? If it was due to COVID, I could accept it. But if the circumstances were normal and regular, usual, what is the reason behind such a decline in GP? So the first step is determining the suitability of a particular substantive analytical procedure for given assertion, taking account of the assessed risk of material misstatement and test of details, if any, for these assertions. Simply, we have to take into account that which particular analytical procedure is suitable for our consideration, our assertion. As I told you, if it was interest, so trend analysis won't work. You know, what was it? You'll have to go with reasonable test, reasonableness test. If it was about sales, then yes, you could go with trend analysis. If you wanted to know about current profits, you could use structural modeling, expected profits, regression equations. So suitability of analytical procedure has to be taken care of. You have to determine which particular analytical procedure is relevant for which kind of assertion. Evaluate the reliability of data from which the auditor's expectation of recorded amounts of ratios is developed, taking account of source, comparability, nature and relevance of information available, and controls over preparation. Basically, the data you are using, it is reliable. You haven't taken data from any system and you are just working upon that. You should have you need to place trust upon the data. It should be the one which is the finalized one. There are no other versions to it, and it is properly authenticated and authorized data, which is being handed over to you for audit. You'll take care of from which source are we getting this data. Is it comparable to other periods? Do we have that much of information available with us with respect to previous period? So we could use comparative ratios. How much information is available and who is having control over the preparation of such data, maintenance of such data, storage and retrieval of this data. Again, CRs, confidentiality, integrity, availability and security of the data. Take, develop an expectation. So as an auditor, I'll expect something. I'm working upon the gross margin ratios and I'll develop an expectation that, okay, this year the GP ratio should be somewhere near 20%, 22%. Develop an expectation of recorded amounts or ratios and evaluate whether the expectation is sufficiently precise to identify a misstatement that individually or when aggregated with other misstatements may cause the financial statements to be materially misstated. So your expectations, is it to the point? Is it crisp? Is it precise? Is it as per the trend or as per the, structure, which will help us to identify a misstatement, whether one misstatement or a group of misstatements, if aggregated, would lead to material misstatement. So whatever expectation we are developing, like in my example, I developed an expectation of GP somewhere around 21 to 22%. Now this particular expectation should be precise enough that if I compare the difference I get would help me locate, spot the misstatements, material misstatements. Darshan, you will read about it in your chapter 11 that if the client will not, it is completely your right for the prior period financial statements. If the client is not able to provide you that it is a limitation on your scope and you will, take action in your audit report accordingly. Theek, Darshan? The fourth point is determining acceptable difference. So determine the amount of any difference of recorded amounts from expected values that is acceptable without further investigation. So I said 2021 GP was 20%. 2022 GP was 22%. 2023 GP is 24%. It could be usually gross margins is fluctuate. You could take it NP as well. If you want to take it NP is also possible. Whatever you wish. 2024. Seeing this trend, as an auditor, I was assuming GP could be somewhere between 26% or anywhere between 25 to 27%. It should be more than 25. It could be less than 27. Itna I could expect. GP comes out to be 25.8. Okay. It comes out to be 26. Perfectly fine. It comes out to be 26.7. Okay. 27. ठीक. If बहुत ज़्यादा आता है तो भी आपको देखना है. What are the reasons? ऐसा नहीं है प्रॉफिट बहुत अच्छा आ गया तो हम खुश है. ठीक है, प्रॉफिट आना चाहिए, इतना आना चाहिए. You check. There could be some expenses which could not have been booked properly. So acceptable, एक acceptable value मुझे डिटरमाइन करनी है डिफरेंस की, जिसमें मुझे फर्दर इन्वेस्टिगेशन करने की जरूरत नहीं है. But if it is again 24, again I have developed a range of 25 to 27 which is acceptable. Anything below this and above this not acceptable, and I'll have to further investigate. If my investigation results support the logic behind this difference, then it is completely fine. Otherwise, I'll have to look into details. Perfectly correct, Himanshu. Comparisons in that case, Himanshu, what do? You compare it with the industry. See, if it is the case of a new industry, Himanshu, so either you compare with the industry, but even with industry, you will not prefer to compare just because initially new industries have their own certain costs, setup costs, right? So in the first year, obviously, you will not resort to you cannot resort to intra-firm trends or analysis. You will resort to inter-firm, even that too with certain restrictions. नई कंपनी के तो अपने खर्चे, नई ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के अपने बहुत खर्चे होते हैं. सेकेंड ईयर ऑनवर्ड्स यू कुड एक्सपेक्ट, यस अब ये इंडस्ट्री में आ गया, अब हम एक्सपेक्ट कर सकते हैं, राइट? Like you shift to a new school or a new college, think 3 to 4 months you want to gel up with other people, to gel up to the environment around you, develop the new rules, new features and all. So after 4 to 6 months, it's fine. It's no excuse. You're a part of that particular environment. Now we did test, then we did and how to design analytical procedures. Now suitability of particular analytical procedure, example, how are some particular analytical procedures applicable to certain given assertions, right? In practical life. Substantive analytical procedures are generally more applicable to large volumes of transactions that tend to be predictable over time. So what are the main terms over here? Large volume of transactions, and that too which are predictable. So for smaller organizations, you cannot, or whatever, you know, there's a small amount of data, you don't have that much of data available with you. You cannot use analytical procedures to up to a certain extent, beyond a certain extent. And that too, that data which can be predicted. The application of planned analytical procedures, planned means like Himanshu, Manisha, and who was a third person with us? Last time, Darshan, right? We were planning, sitting in our office, how are we going to use analytical procedures? हम कैसे यूज करेंगे? So the planned application of planned analytical procedures, जो हमने प्लान किए थे, हम ये ratios लगाएंगे. They were discussing with me. हम सर डेटर्स वेलोसिटी निकालेंगे चेक करने के लिए इनके रिसीवेबल्स का क्या, इनका ऑपरेटिंग जो साइकिल है, इज इट प्रॉपर और नॉट, वर्किंग कैपिटल गैप तो नहीं है. We could check the interest trend, interest rates, whether being properly accrued and taken care of or not. So application of planned analytical procedure is based upon the expectation that relationships among data exist and continue in the absence of known conditions to the contrary. Conditions to the contrary means to the opposite. So they continue to exist. There is a relationship between the level, amount of FDR balance and the amount of interest. There is a relationship between the amount of interest expense and the loan balance in the balance sheet. And they continue to exist unless and until there is some condition to the contrary. कुछ एक्सेप्शनल सिचुएशन है, फिर हम मान सकते हैं भी वो रिलेशनशिप थोड़ी इफेक्ट हुई है दो फाइनेंशियल फिगर्स की आपस में, दो फाइनेंशियल एलिमेंट्स की, अदरवाइज वो रिलेशनशिप एग्जिस्ट करती है. इसी एक्सपेक्टेशन के बेसिस पे मैंने अपने एनालिटिकल प्रोसीजर्स प्लान किए थे और उनको मैं यूज करूंगा. Himanshu, do you feel the auditor can be overall assured? If we have, when we happen to meet in the later chapters, I'll ask you this question, Himanshu. Once you are through chapter 11, audit report, Pathak Saab, once you are done through chapter 11, then you will yourself give answer to this question, right? Okay, Kiran, बहुत ज्यादा काम रह नहीं गया है. अब इतने 3 आर्टिकल्स हैं मेरे पास, अब 3 और आर्टिकल्स लाऊंगा तो 6 को स्टाइपेंड दूंगा, नहीं इतना लंबा काम नहीं है। 3 आर्टिकल्स अभी, बाकी नए 3 आर्टिकल्स की टीम में नेक्स्ट चैप्टर में, किसी और चैप्टर में बनाएंगे, ठीक। However, the suitability of a particular analytical procedure will depend upon the auditor's assessment of how effective it will be in detecting a misstatement that individually or when aggregated with other misstatements may cause the financial statements to be materially misstated. So suitability of a particular analytical procedure will also depend upon auditor. Auditor की professional judgment के basis पे assessment. ये particular analytical procedure कितना इफेक्टिव होगा, ठीक। अगर मुझे सेल्स, प्रॉफिट्स, एक्सपेंसेस, इनके बेसिस पे डिसीजन लेना है या मटेरियल में स्टेटमेंट निकालनी है, बट ऑब्वियस आई विल यूज द वेलोसिटी रेशियोज, आई विल यूज द प्रॉफिट रेशियोज और प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी रेशियोज, राइट। If I want to see the financial health of the business, I'll use liquidity ratios, solvency ratios to check the working capital strength of the business, financial health of the business, solvency ratios. If I have to check the interest accruals and all, the reasonable tests. If I want to compare it with the industry, trend analysis, I could go with trend analysis if I have to compare it with the industry. So which particular analytical procedure is effective for a particular procedure or element, which when used over there will help the auditor in detecting a misstatement, which could further be a material misstatement. So it says in some cases, even an unsophisticated predictive model may be effective as an analytical procedure. Example देखते हैं, भी उसका कोई statistical base नहीं है, कोई mathematical base नहीं है, ऑडिटर अपनी प्रोफेशनल जजमेंट के बेसिस पे ऐसा कुछ प्रोसीजर यूज कर रहा है, तो कई बार उस केसेस में भी वो कहते हैं भी दैट कुड आल्सो बी यूज्ड एज एन एनालिटिकल प्रोसीजर। ऑडिटर की अपनी असेसमेंट, नॉलेज या ऑब्जर्वेशन के बेसिस पे ऑडिटर कोई ऐसा मेथड या कोई ऐसा प्रोसीजर निकालता है विच इज नॉट बैक्ड बाय एनी मैथमेटिकल टेक्निक और स्टैटिस्टिकल टेक्निक, बट इवन दैट कैन बी यूज्ड बाय द ऑडिटर एज एन एनालिटिकल प्रोसीजर। वो हमें क्या एग्जांपल दे रहा है? If an entity has a known number of employees at fixed rates of pay throughout the period, it may be possible for the auditor to use this data to estimate the total payroll cost for the period with a high degree of accuracy. There are a known number of employees and we have fixed rates of pay, but obvious number of employees multiply the fixed rate of pay, बहुत accuracy, quite accurate result you will get, thereby providing audit evidence for a significant item in the financial statements and reducing the need to perform test of details on the payroll. Now, why do I need to perform my audit procedures on that? मुझे पता है इतने employees हैं. Okay, I'll check the employee register. There are no fictitious payments. There are methods to check that. There are 100 employees in the factory on daily wages, and right, and they are being paid at the rate of 500 rupees per day. So per day would be 50,000. अब इसमें मैं और क्या ऑडिट टेस्ट लगाऊं? Why should I waste my energy and time on this? The simple math से मेरे को निकल रहा है, fixed pay, fixed number of employees, done. The use of a widely recognized trade ratio such as profit margins for different types of retail entities can often be used effectively in substantive analytical procedures to provide evidence to support the reasonableness of recorded amounts. Retail ki business mein, it is giving an example of using profit ratios, quite normal. Different types of analytical procedures provide different levels of assurance. How? For example, the prediction of total rental income on a building divided into apartments, taking the rental rates, the number of apartments, and vacancy rates into consideration, can provide persuasive evidence and may eliminate the need for further verification by means of test of details, provided the elements are appropriately verified. I know that there is this building. There is ground floor, first floor, and second floor. 3 apartments on first floor, 3 apartments on second floor, and 2 apartments on first floor, ground floor. I have the rental rates of each apartment at the ground level, first level, and the second level. I'll multiply the rental rates by the occupancy, and if there is any vacancy, I'll take care into that into consideration, and I can estimate the total rental income that can be predicted. Simplifying, why do I need to go for ratios? पिछले साल rental income कितना था, इस बार rental income कितना है, next year हम कितना expect कर सकते हैं. I could prima facie, I could see it that if the rental income is low this year, there could be vacancy. One of the apartments was vacant. Fine. If it is increased, what could be the reason? Increase in rental rates. For quite normal and obvious prepositions and assertions, why do I need to apply my procedures? In contrast, calculation and comparison of gross margin percentages as a means of confirming a revenue figure may provide less persuasive evidence, but may provide useful corroboration if used in combination with other audit procedures. Corroborative evidence or corroboration means which supports the main evidence in conjunction with. So it says, if you could calculate and compare GP ratios, right? If you could use GP ratios to confirm the revenue figures, the turnover figures, it might be less persuasive evidence. Why? You could have resorted to discounts, there could have been a fall in the selling price. But if you use it with other audit procedures, combination with other audit procedures, right, it might lead you to a good result. You know, there could be a misstatement. Okay, that is the homework for you during the break. You'll have to provide me with an example. We'll discuss one example on this. So market, when I give you a break today, you'll not go for pakoras and laddus. You will think of an example where if I use gross GP percentages with other kind of procedures, it would provide me with revenue figures, confirmation to revenue figures. So think from the point of view of an auditor. Step into my shoes as an auditor and think on this, right? Some brainstorming for you. The determination of the suitability of a particular substantive analytical procedure is influenced by the nature of the assertion and the auditor's assessment of the risk of material statement. For example, if control over sales order processing are weak, the auditor may place more reliance on test of details rather than on substantive analytical procedures for assertions related to receivables. So, this is a good example. Controls over sale order processing are weak. What could be the weaknesses? Okay, what could be the weaknesses? Can anybody tell me? Just help me out with this. What could be the weaknesses in sales over sales order processing? What could be the weaknesses in sales order processing? Tell me. सेल्स ऑर्डर प्रोसेस करते हुए कंपनी में, फैक्ट्री में, शोरूम में, कहीं पे भी चले जाओ आप, जहां भी अपनी इमेजिनेशन में जाना चाहते हो, क्या कमी पेशी हो सकती है कंट्रोल्स में? वेयर कुड द कंट्रोल्स गो वीक? टेल मी. Just a second, tell me, right? Okay. Order is accepted without confirmation of adequate inventory. Fine. Sales invoices are not issued properly. Good. Sales invoices. Problem could be with sales invoices. Or staff is not working properly. ठीक है, भूमिका internal controls with respect to sales order processing. Order is accepted without confirmation of adequate inventory. Yes, Himanshu, good. Sales not recorded properly. Yes. Sales omitted, not recorded properly. Or lack of proper record of quantity of sales, cash received from something. Good, Goodiri. Rajiv, this is what Himanshu said. Debtor credibility is not checked before giving credit. ठीक है? अब वो क्या कह रहा है आपके एग्जांपल में? If controls over sales order processing are weak, मुझे कैसे पता लगा? इन चीजों से पता लगा. The auditor may place more reliance on test of details. How will test of details? He'll check the details. He'll check the sales invoices, credit notes. What were the situations where, what was the frequency of such situations when order was accepted without any stock with the company? This could affect the goodwill. Are the sales properly recorded in the books? Rather than going with substantive analytical procedures for assertions related to receivables. So वो debtors पे जाने की बजाय डेटर्स की रेशियोज यूज कर, डेटर्स के ऊपर रेशियोज यूज करेंगे तो हमें ठीक है पता लग जाएगा क्या ऑपरेटिंग साइकिल मैनेजमेंट है, क्रेडिट सेल्स कितनी है, कैश सेल्स कितनी है. वी कुड गेट दिस. बट फर्दर इन डिटेल व्हेन कंट्रोल ओवर सेल्स इज वीक, आई विल हैव टू चेक टेस्ट ऑन डिटेल्स. You know, analytical procedures provide me corroborative evidences. They are not sole evidences. That is what we studied in the beginning of the chapter, that auditor usually uses these procedures in every phase, but more near the end of the audit to collect evidences to what he has checked over controls and details. So the basic details में ही problem है. Auditor will go for check, test the details rather than वो substantive analytical procedure ratios वगैरह लेके बैठेगा. डेटा में ही प्रॉब्लम है. जब डेटा में ही कुछ प्रॉब्लम है और वही हमें चेक करना है, तो मैं इस डेटा के ऊपर लगाने वाला ऑपरेशन कैसे कर लूं? क्योंकि कंट्रोल्स वीक है, तो ये मेरे लिए सेकेंडरी हो जाते हैं और यहां पे मेरे को टेस्ट ऑफ डिटेल्स के ऊपर ही रिलाई करना पड़ेगा. ठीक. Particular substantive analytical procedures may also be considered suitable when test of details are performed on the same assertion. So you are performing as an auditor test of details, and you could find a particular analytical procedure is relevant in our case. Example, when obtaining audit evidence regarding the valuation assertion for accounts receivable balances, the auditor may apply analytical procedures to an aging of customer accounts in addition to performing test of details on subsequent cash receipts to determine the collectibility of the receivables. So what does this example say? It says you could use particular analytical procedures while testing details. What details I am testing? I am testing the debtor details, debtor balances, their valuation. How have they been valued? So it says, while obtaining audit evidence regarding the valuation assertion for accounts receivables, as an auditor, I may apply my analytical procedures to customer accounts, aging. I will perform my test of details on debtor balances, subsequent cash received from debtors, cash, how is the debtor cycle working, how are we getting the cash, that is test of details. अब एनालिटिकल प्रोसीजर्स में कहां यूज करूंगा? लाइक आई कुड गो विद डेटर्स वेलोसिटी, डेटर्स टर्नओवर रेशियो. मैं डेटर्स रिसीवेबल्स, अकाउंट रिसीवेबल की ऊपर एनालिटिकल प्रोसीजर्स लगा सकता हूं. डेटर्स वेलोसिटी विल टेल मी have checked in the cash receipt from the debtors. 31st March, I am receiving cash from my debtors after 31st March, subsequent cash receipts, or at any period of time. Are they in line with each other? कितनी जल्दी हमारे डेटर्स मूव हो रहे हैं, नए आ रहे हैं, पुराने खत्म हो रहे हैं, क्या उनकी एजिंग है? If cash received from debtors is in a good, healthy situation, the aging should not be a problem. If we are having a good debtors velocity, aging would not be more than, there would be almost a very few debtors who are as old as more than 12 months. Because subsequent cash receipts are good, debtors velocity is good, the aging would not be a problem here. Only 3 months, 6 months, or less than 12 months debtors would be there. So this is how test of details and substantive analytical procedures are going to give you corroborative evidence, are going to complement each other. अगर मुझे कैश जो है, मैंने चेक किया, क्रेडिट सेल्स करने के बाद जो कैश है बहुत इजीली 2 महीने 3 महीने में रिकवर हो रहा है. डेटर्स वेलोसिटी, फिर मैंने डेटर्स वेलोसिटी कैलकुलेट करी, वो भी अच्छी डेटर्स वेलोसिटी आ रही है, गुड आ रही है. तो ये दोनों एक दूसरे को कॉम्प्लीमेंट कर रहे हैं. फर्दर मैंने एजिंग चेक किया, डेटर्स का एजिंग ग्रुप चेक किया, तो बहुत कम ऐसे डेटर्स थे जो 12 महीने से ज्यादा पेंडिंग थे. ये तीनों चीजें एक दूसरे को कॉम्प्लीमेंट कर रही है. अगर कहीं यहाँ पे कोई भी एक चीज कॉम्प्लीमेंट्री नहीं निकल के आती, एक दूसरे को कॉम्प्लीमेंट्री निकलती है, देन आई विल हैव टू लुक गो थ्रू ये कैसे हो रहा है. कैश तो बहुत अच्छा आ रहा है डेटर से, पर डेटर वेलोसिटी कम है, डेटर्स वेलोसिटी में प्रॉब्लम है. कैश अच्छा आ रहा है पर एजिंग बहुत ज्यादा है, 12 महीने से ज्यादा वाले डेटर्स बहुत है. एजिंग कम है, डेटर्स वेलोसिटी भी अच्छी है, पर कैश तो आ ही नहीं रहा डेटर से. जा कहां रहे, डेटर्स कंज्यूम कहां हो रहे हैं. So this is how टेस्ट ऑफ डिटेल्स और आपके जो एनालिटिकल प्रोसीजर्स है एक दूसरे को कॉम्प्लीमेंट कहां पे करते हैं. ये दोनों एग्जांपल्स आपको समझ में आई? हाउ नेचर ऑफ असर्शन कैन इफेक्ट your determining substantial analytical procedures, and how test of details can affect your use of analytical procedures. Are these two examples clear to you, people? Let me know only, then I'll move to the next topic. ओके ग्रेट, चलिए हाँ जी, reliability of data. Is my screen visible to everyone? I hope my screen is visible. चलो, the reliability of data. So how do you feel, how do you check whether ये data is reliable or not? तुम विश्वास कर सकते हो डेटा के ऊपर, बिकॉज डेटा इज द ओनली थिंग, डेटा ही आप ऑडिट कर रहे हैं, डेटा ही आप यूज कर रहे हैं अपने प्रोसीजर्स के लिए। तो नो, अब फिर कहेंगे सर आप फूडी हो अगर पकौड़े और लड्डू बनाने वाला बेसन ही खराब है तो पकौड़े खराब होंगे, लड्डू खराब होंगे। अगर हम ऑडिट कर रहे हैं डेटा का, डेटा में ही प्रॉब्लम है, इट इज नॉट रिलायबल, तो काहे की बुक्स, काहे का ऑडिट? हमारा रॉ मटेरियल क्या है? डेटा। what is the finished product, the information we are getting with that data, and based upon that information we are conducting an audit. So how do we know that data is reliable or not? The reliability of data is influenced by source. कहां से आया है आपका ये डेटा? सोर्स पढ़ा है चैप्टर 2 में आपने, सोर्स ऑफ डेटा। What are the various sources of data? बताना जरा। Nature of data, okay, electronic data, physical data, and is dependent on the circumstances under which it is obtained. Accordingly, the following are relevant when determining whether data is reliable for purpose of designing substantive analytical procedure or not. So factors deciding the availability, reliability of data. What are these factors? Source of information. Second, comparability of the information. Nature and relevance of information. Controls over the preparation of the information. हाँ चलिए एक एक करके सारा पढ़ते हैं, one by one. Source of the information available. Source. For example, information may be more reliable when it is obtained from independent sources outside the entity. So, sources of data, what could it be? Oh, I'm sorry. Sources. External, internal, internal within the organization, external. It says independent sources outside the entity. So what could be the independent sources? Books of accounts, documents, transactions, invoices, these are all internal. What could be the external sources? External confirmations, right? Government records, third-party confirmations or external confirmation, again, like here we have debtors, creditors, banks, bank certificates. These are, so what do you check? You'll check, for example, a simple situation. You'll ask for a bank certificate and check the balance with ABC Bank in the name of the company stands at 10,038 rupees in the balance sheet. How do I confirm this? I'll ask the management to provide me with a banker's certificate that the balance maintained by the company with them is this one. I'll check it with the bank certificate, and that would be an evidence that yes, this particular data is reliable. Okay. ठीक. चलिए. So data may be more reliable when it is obtained from the independent sources outside the entity. But obvious है. अब अगर बाहर independent which are not influenced by the organization, गवर्नमेंट रिकॉर्ड्स हैं, फॉर एग्जांपल आपको अगर एमसीए से कुछ डॉक्यूमेंट चाहिए, आप एमसीए की वेबसाइट पे डायरेक्टर्स कौन है, लास्ट टाइम एनुअल रिटर्न्स कब फाइल हुई थी, कंपनी ने क्या मीटिंग्स की डिटेल्स फाइल की हैं एमसीए के साथ, आप वहां से चेक कर सकते हैं कितनी बोर्ड ऑफ डायरेक्टर्स की मीटिंग्स हुई थी और एजीएम. कोई चेंजेस ऐसे हैं जो एमसीए को बताने पड़ते हैं, एनी चेंजेस व्हिच नीड टू बी ब्रॉट टू द नॉलेज ऑफ एमसीए वाया कंपनी फाइलिंग्स, यू कैन चेक इट ओवर एमसीए वेबसाइट. अगर आपको टर्नओवर चेक करनी, यू वांट टू चेक द सेल्स, जीएसटी रिटर्न्स, you have GST returns as well. You can ask for the same. You can ask for ID password. Okay, give me the ID password of your GST portal and let me check what turnover have you been filing with the GST authorities. Is it complementing what is it matching with what you have recorded in your books? And if there are any adjustments, what adjustments have been accounted for? Source of information. Next, comparability of the information available. For example, broad industry data may need to be supplemented to be comparable to that of the entity that produces and sells specialized products. इसकी एग्जाम्पल आप देख सकते हैं. आपने अगर कोविड में, तुम सबने कोविड वैक्सीन तो ली होगी. So आपको ध्यान होगा during that vaccine era we had Covishield, we had Covaxin, then Moderna, Pfizer, ठीक. और एक वो रेनबैक्सी के साथ रशियन मेडिसिन भी आई थी, उसका वैक्सीन आई थी, उसका नाम भूल गया मैं, क्या था, किसी को याद है उसका नाम क्या था? आई डोंट नो. नहीं, वो तो स्पेसशिप का नाम है. ओके, वो रशियन वाली का मेरे को ध्यान नहीं आ रहा क्या नाम था. तो आपने देखा होगा इन सब वैक्सीन के एफिकेसी रेशियोज की बात हो रही थी. कौन सी वैक्सीन कितनी इफेक्टिव है. So this was what the broad industry data available to compare the research cost, the other costs related to these, the revenues related. Sputnik ही नाम था. I thought Sputnik was a spaceship. Okay, Sputnik नाम था. ठीक है, ठीक. जिनके एफिकेसी रेशियोज की बात हो रही थी. So this is what the broad industry data available. Specialized products. Example. Nature and relevance of the information available. Whether budgets have been established as results to be expected rather than as goals to be achieved. Very simple. Relevant है या नहीं है, budget expected आपने develop किया है, nature कैसी है data की, budgeted है, actual है, historical है, physical form में है, electronic form में है, हमारे लिए relevant है या नहीं है. Simple. Controls over the preparation of the information that is designed to ensure its completeness, accuracy, and validity. So, who is preparing the statements? Who is reviewing these the data, the information from the data, and who is maintaining the budget's anticipated results? are these different persons or one and the same person? Right? ये अलग-अलग लोग हैं या सेम लोग हैं? Controls कैसे हैं over the preparation of information? Weak हैं या strong है? They would also test it. Obviously, if person A is preparing the data, he is reviewing his work, and he is maintaining this, I will see controls are weak over preparation of the information from the data. I'll have to work more aggressive audit procedures. If there are 3 people, person A prepares it, person B reviews it, and person C compares it with the budgets prepared. There are 3 people who are supervising each other's work. They might be in hierarchy as well. They might be at the common level of organization as well. But at least there is a good control over it. Darshan, for example, I would say, as an Darshan, you are in my audit team. Okay. I've given you an audit program, Darshan, where I've told you that Darshan, go to the factory of the client and check for the price of raw materials. For example, ours was a confectioner, right? So I asked you, Darshan, go over there and check the price of the raw materials being recorded in the books of accounts. Darshan, you went there, you had a word with the management over there, you checked their records, and you found that the price of the milk being used as raw material, or sugar being used as a raw material in the preparation of sweets is quite high. It's quite fluctuating. You have a doubt. You say, no, I don't believe you. Sugar my father buys for our, house consumption, it is bought at this rate. A factory would be, purchasing or buying sugar at wholesale rates, bulk rates. The fluctuations are there, and if you are not satisfied, Darshan, you'll say, I don't find your data reliable. Give me some proof that it is reliable. They'll come up with the trend in the fluctuating trend of sugar prices. They'll show you an article. The food industry impacted by the rise in the prices of sugar. They'll come up with the industry trend. See, in the industry as well, you can compare, Darshan sir, yourself. How have the sugar prices been soaring high? And that is why in our records as well, the sugar prices are high, recorded at a high value. So this is how comparable, if your information is comparable, you can be sure of their reliability. Theek, Darshan? So how is comparability affecting the reliability? I suppose your question is clear now, doubt is clear, Darshan. Radhika, what didn't you get? You have to ask me a specific question. क्या समझ में नहीं आया? You have to tell me which point or any particular example. You have to ask me specifically. ठीक? The auditor may consider testing the operating effectiveness of controls, if any, over the entity's preparation of information used by the auditor in performing substantive analytical procedures in response to assessed risks. When such controls are effective, the auditor generally has greater confidence in the reliability of the information and therefore in the results of analytical procedures. The operating effectiveness of controls over non-financial information may often be tested in conjunction with other tests of controls. I suppose this is clear to you. ये हम काफी टाइम से पढ़ते आ रहे हैं. I suppose ये समझ आएगा. More the confidence over controls, greater reliability over information. Good controls over non-financial information, for example, movement of employees, biometrics, or the working environment, the work structure over there in the organization. Some non-financial information, the level of labor turnover. It gives you an example as well. For example, it says, in establishing controls over the processing of sales invoices, an entity may include controls over the recording of unit sales. In these circumstances, the auditor may test the operating effectiveness of controls over the recording of unit sales in conjunction with the test of the operating effectiveness of controls over the processing of sales invoices. Alternatively, the auditor may consider whether the information was subject to audit testing. SA 500 establishes requirements and provides guidance in determining the audit procedures to be performed on the information to be used as substantive analytical procedures. It says, in establishing controls over the processing of sales invoices, entity may include controls over the recording of unit sales. How are the sales of each product being recorded? Auditor may check that as well. How is it being recorded? A product is being sold, a token is being issued, or a bulk order is being received. How is it that order being transferred to the sales from the sales department to the production department? How does the production department places its order of the raw material? What is the time given by them? What are the TNC given by them? Then in what time is it prepared? How is a particular unit sale recorded? You can check the invoices. This is internal control over receiving sales or orders and processing of orders, apart from checking your invoices. So I can check upon the controls over the processing of sales invoices as well, along with checking how are unit sales recorded, particular products or a group of products or a particular order. So this was what? This was reliability of data. How do we find that a data is reliable or not? Any doubts till now, please? Before we move to the next topic. So our first topic, using analytical procedures as substantive test. Our first one was this: determining the suitability of analytical procedures. We did this: suitability of particular analytical procedures for given assertions, right? Now, what was the next factor while using analytical procedures as substantive tests? This one: evaluating the reliability of data. Take the third one, developing an expectation by the auditor, and fourth one, determining the acceptable difference. We have done suitability, we have done reliability. Now we are left with developing an expectation and determining acceptable difference. चलिए, evaluation of whether the expectation is sufficiently precise or not. As an auditor, what I am expecting, I should evaluate whether it is precise near to what should it be. As I gave you the example of that 25 to 27%. Matters relevant to the auditor's evaluation of whether the expectation can be developed sufficiently precisely to identify a misstatement that, when aggregated with other misstatements, may cause the financial statements to be materially misstated. So here we get misstatement 1. You understand what is a misstatement and what is a material misstatement? The deficiency, what we had done in chapter 6. हमने किया था उसमें what is a misstatement, material misstatement? Either this misstatement over here or many misstatements in aggregate would lead to material misstatements. So matters. What matters should he consider, should keep under his consideration to check whether his expectation developed, the expectation developed by him is sufficiently precise, near to what the actual should be or not. The accuracy, the first one is the accuracy with which the expected results of substantive analytical procedures can be predicted. So he'll develop an accuracy rate. Yes, this is how I can develop an expectation that I can predict the GP margins. I can predict the turnover for the next year. I cannot predict the interest for the next year. I cannot be accurate because it depends upon RBI policies. It depends upon RBI policies. How can I predict that? I can predict that to a certain level. So the accuracy rate over there might fall. But as far as turnover is concerned, or somebody who would have predicted the turnover in 2019 accurately, there was a big change, a big unexpected circumstances 2020. So these are some exceptional circumstances, but turnovers, profits, obviously a bit of accuracy we can predict. For example, the auditor may expect greater consistency in comparing gross profit margins from one period to another than in comparing discretionary expenses such as research or advice. What is discretionary? Voluntary. अपनी मर्जी से. So auditor GP margins compare कर सकता है और expectation develop कर सकता है, right? Because this is a business trend. But R&D costs, discretionary, dependent upon the merzi, of the company. Whether they would be expending this much on research and development or not in the coming year. Right? Whether they are ready to expend that much on research and development or not. So With profit margins, yes, I can predict, I can develop an expectation. But with respect to certain discretionary expenses such as research or advertising, I might not be able to predict. That is one factor. With what accuracy can I predict my can I develop my expectation? The second factor, the degree to which information can be disaggregated. Disaggregated, Bhumika asked me. I hope the screen is visible now, people. Is it visible now? Just a second. Okay, is it visible now?
Okay, guys, we are back after that technical glitch and your break. So, are you with me over here? Now the screen is visible. Please let me know through the query session. The screen is visible and you are back with me. Oh, good, Himanshu. Very good. छा गए पाठक साहब. चलिए, तो हम कहाँ थे? We were at evaluation of whether the expectation is sufficiently precise or not. The first point we did what was the accuracy with which the auditor can expect the results. ठीक? The second part was the degree to which the information can be disaggregated. Bhumika asked me in the beginning of the session, what is disaggregation? So dividing it into further subparts and components. For example, the degree, up to what level can you divide the information? Substantive analytical procedures may be more effective when applied to financial information on individual sections of an operation or to financial statements of components of a diversified entity than when applied to the financial statements of the entity as a whole. We discussed about what are consolidated financial statements. So it says, while applying analytical procedures, you may apply them on consolidated financial statements also, but they'll give you more effective results when applied to the components and when you could develop an expectation separately for each component. The substantive analytical procedures would provide you more effective results with individual sections and which individual components. Higher the level of disaggregation, more you can rely upon the results of your analytical procedures. The availability of information, both financial and non-financial. Auditor may consider whether financial information such as budgets, forecasts, or non-financial information such as the number of units produced or sold is available to design substantive analytical procedures. If the information is available, the auditor may also consider the reliability of the information. For example, if you are comparing the trend and you want to develop an expectation, what could be the future trend? Financial information available is budget or forecast. आने वाले time का anticipated figures. So, have you been provided with those budgets and forecasts by the entity? Then you will design your substantive analytical procedures accordingly. You'll develop your expectations accordingly, as per the data available, as per the information available. Have you been provided or the units produced or sold quantities available to you? Number of units produced or the number of units sold, is the quantity available to you? You will design your quantitative procedures accordingly. Right? Now the last part was designed. You have designed a substantive analytical procedure. You have checked on the reliability of the data. You have developed the precise expectation. Now, last part, difference from your expected value and what has been recorded by the entity. Amount of difference of recorded amount from expected values that is acceptable. The auditor's determination of the amount of difference from the expectation that can be accepted without further investigation is influenced by materiality and consistency with the desired level of assurance, taking into account of the possibility that a misstatement individually or when aggregated with other misstatements may cause the financial statements to be materially misstated. Auditor has to develop that what is the acceptable difference. Do you remember? the tolerable error level, the tolerable rate of deviation. Over here as well, what is the acceptable difference between the result auditor has expected and the actual figures recorded by the client entity? If there is a difference, what is the level, to what level can the auditor accept that particular difference, tolerate the difference without going into further investigation? It will be influenced by the materiality involved and what level of assurance is desired by the auditor. Conservative auditor, a bit lenient auditor, following mixed approach, to spot misstatements or misstatements in combination which could lead to the financial statements to be materially misstated. ऐसे 330 कहता है, to obtain more persuasive audit evidence, the higher the auditor's assessment of risk. जितना रिस्क हाई असेस करेगा ऑडिटर, उतना उसे ज्यादा ऑडिट एविडेंस चाहिए. व्हाट इज मेंट बाय परसुएसिव ऑडिट एविडेंस? हमने फर्स्ट टाइम किया था चैप्टर 6 में भी और 7 में भी किया है. परसुएसिव ऑडिट एविडेंस क्या होता है? Accordingly, as assessed risk increases, amount of difference considered acceptable without investigation decreases in order to achieve the desired level of persuasive evidence. वो क्या कह रहा है? वो कह रहा है जितना आपका रिस्क जो है, आपका रिस्क लेवल, जितना आप रिस्क कंजर्वेटिव हो गया, आपका रिस्क अगर आप ज्यादा लेने को तैयार है, उतना ही आपका एक्सेप्टेबल लेवल ज्यादा हो सकता है. ठीक, जितना आप कम रिस्क लेना चाहते हैं, उतना ही आप एक्सेप्टेबल डिफरेंस कम रखेंगे. ठीक, so accordingly as the assessed risk increases, the amount of without. अब ये रिस्क का दूसरा डेफिनेशन देखिए. Now it says it was with respect to auditor. Now auditor's assessment of risk. If auditor assesses that the risk is high, assessed risk is high, auditor's assessment of risk is high, that there is the organization's work is risky, he'll be more conservative in his approach and will decide that the acceptable level of difference should be lower. Already the organization's work is risky. If he feels that the assessed risk is low, the controls are good, test of details are providing good results, he has assessed the risk to be low, his acceptable difference would be higher. Okay, fine. I need not go into further investigation because the risk is low. That is what it is trying to say. As the assessed risk increases, the amount of difference considered acceptable without investigation decreases in order to achieve the desired level of persuasive evidence. Persuasive means which can be proved convinced. It should convince the auditor. ठीक? Coming to the last part of the chapter, investigating results of analytical procedures. If analytical procedures performed in accordance with SA 520 identify fluctuations or relationships that are inconsistent with other relevant information or that differ from expected values by a significant amount. What is the significant amount? Higher than the acceptable difference. In that case, auditor will go into further investigation. This further investigation will be done by fluctuations or inconsistency in relationships or expected values differ by a significant amount, that is higher than the acceptable level. So auditor shall investigate such differences by inquiring of management and obtaining appropriate audit evidence relevant to management responses. Audit evidence relevant to management responses may be obtained by evaluating those responses, taking into account the auditor's understanding of the entity and its environment. So, they'll inquire the management. What are these fluctuations because of? Why is the difference level so high between the expectation and what I have obtained? I could see the GP should be 24%, but your GP has fallen to 20%. What are the reasons? Oh, sir, the sales have increased to such a higher level that direct expenses and all that stuff, the GP margin has decreased. Purchase prices have increased. So you'll inquire the management and you'll ask for appropriate audit evidence, whatever they have told you, whatever reasons they have given. You should collect audit evidence, appropriate audit evidence to substantiate their response against the fluctuation, the inconsistency, or a higher level of acceptable difference which is not accepted. And further, you may perform as an auditor other audit procedures as necessary in the circumstances. The need to perform other audit procedures may arise when management is unable to provide an explanation or the explanation together with the auditor obtained relevant to management response is not considered adequate. You are not satisfied with what management told you. Sir, होता रहता है, जीवन है, दुनिया है, ऊपर नीचे होता रहता है, कभी ज्यादा कभी कम. ये क्या रीजन हुआ? ये क्या रीजन है? How do I record it? What is the what evidence should I collect it for your such reason? So I'm not convinced. So keeping aside their response, I'll work upon other procedures. I'll design other audit procedures. Right? I'll go into details. Why is the GP margin so low? I'll inquire of the employees. I'll check the further records and could go for some exceptional items. Could find some exceptional items. If the management doesn't know, I could come to a conclusion. Okay, purchase prices have risen. Selling price has gone down. That could be the reason. So, investigating the results of analytical procedures. Analytical procedures that assist when forming an overall conclusion. The conclusions drawn from the results of analytical procedures designed and performed in accordance with are intended to corroborate conclusions formed during the audit of individual components or elements of the financial statements. As I told you, मैं cash check कर रहा हूँ, मैं debtors check कर रहा हूँ, मैं bad debts, what are the individual components involved? Bad debts, provision for doubtful debts, cash receipts, credit sales from the profit and loss account, and debtors from the balance sheet, their categorization. Now, I have tested them in detail, the individual components, and I am applying analytical procedures to calculate provision for debts or trend in bad debts, or your debtors velocity, debtors turnover ratio near the end of the audit to get corroborate conclusions. Corroborate means providing evidence, conjugate, to substantiate, to provide complement. Whatever audit I have done of the individual components, these analytical procedures, the ratios I am using are corroborating what I have found by auditing individual components. This assists the auditor to draw reasonable conclusions on which to base the auditor's opinion. The results of such analytical procedures may identify a previously unrecognized risk of material misstatement. और हो सकता है अगर corroboration नहीं बनती evidence की, what we are getting from analytical procedures, I told you, cash आ रहा है, but again, debtors की velocity proper नहीं आ रही है. So there could be something, there could be a misstatement from previous period which could have been unrecognized. तो इस केस में करंट ऑडिट में नहीं आया, बट पिछले केसेस में प्रायर पीरियड में था a risk of material misstatement which was not unrecognized. So you have to take care of that as well. Considering that as well, you might have to revise your risk of assessment and modify your auditing procedures accordingly. Considerations specific to public sector entities. What are the public sector entities? कौन सी public sector entities? कुछ example दोगे? Public sector entities के कुछ example दोगे आप लोग मेरे को? Can you give me some examples of public sector entities? नहीं, ICI is a body corporate not a public sector enterprise. हिमांशु ICI नहीं है. Yeah, BPCL, ONGC, GAIL, SAIL, ठीक है, ये हैं public sector enterprises. SBI, undertakings and enterprises. So BSNL, yes. Railways, good. Considerations specific to public sector enterprises. The last topic of the chapter, what does it say? It says the relationships between individual financial statements items traditionally considered in the audit of business entities may not always be relevant in the audit of governments or other non-business public sector entities. For example, in many public sector entities, there may be little direct relationship between revenue and expenditure. In addition, because expenditure on the acquisition of assets may not be capitalized, there may be no relationship between expenditures on, for example, inventories and fixed assets, and the amount of those assets reported in the balance sheet financial statements. So it says sometimes some expenses in the public sector enterprises are mandatory. They have to be made. So it says there is little direct relationship between revenue and expenditure. In some enterprises, the fixed assets are not capitalized but put into the revenue. In that case, you cannot calculate expense ratios properly, and you cannot relate a plausible relationship with the sales is not possible. So also industry data or statistics for comparative purposes may not be available in the public sector. However, other relationships may be relevant. For example, variation in the cost per kilometer of road construction, or the number of vehicles acquired compared with vehicles retired, some non-financial information. It says in case of public sector entities, analytical use of analytical procedures might not provide that much of direct relationships as in case of business entities. This is what it intends to say, the last part. The chapter is finished. Any doubts you want to ask, or should we go to the questions directly? Analytical procedures. November 2022 audit paper. Correct, incorrect. Question number 1, part E. Is it visible to everyone? The question asks, the term analytical procedures means evaluation of financial information through analysis of plausible relationships among financial data and non-financial data. What is your answer? Correct, incorrect? And if you would like to give reason, most welcome. Yes, Darshan, in that case, there are some expenses which are required to be mandatory. They might not find direct relationship between various elements of the financial statements. As one example they gave was acquiring capital assets in some of the public sector entities, they are not capitalized, and in that case profits are affected. You know, the timing concept, the profits are get affected, and so does the other elements of the financial statement. So ratios might not give the true results. Okay, Rajiv says correct, Bhumika says correct, Darshan says correct, Diksha says correct. बाकी लोग कहाँ गए? चलिए देखते हैं whether you are correct or incorrect. Correct. As per Standard Auditing 520, the term analytical procedure means the evaluation of financial information through analysis of plausible relationships among both financial and non-financial data. अब अगर आप इतना लिखेंगे तो you will not get marks. You will get marks only get writing correct. This is a statement you have written as per SA 520, right? And you have just repeated what the question asked you. You have to further explain. Analytical procedures encompass such investigation as is necessary of identified fluctuations or relationships that are inconsistent with other relevant information or that differ from expected values by a significant amount. Take. Okay. So next question. We'll try to cover up questions from the chapter of sampling as well. Okay. What are the matters that the auditor shall consider while designing an audit sample? Designing audit samples, the second session of audit sampling. What are the matters that the auditor shall consider while designing an audit sample? So what were those matters? Here we are. The purpose of audit procedures and characteristics of population, designing the audit sample, determine sample size, then selection of items for sample in such a way that each sampling unit in population has a chance of selection. When designing an audit sample, the auditor shall determine the sample selected must be representative of the population. Specific purpose to be achieved and combination of audit procedures to be used. Nature of the audit evidence sought and possible deviations, and to fulfill the requirement as a 500 while performing audit sampling. So this was a 3 marks question. Good, Bhumika. Coming to next question. See, as per Standard on Auditing 520 analytical procedures, what are the examples of analytical procedures having consideration of relationships? As per SA 520, what are the examples of analytical procedures having consideration of relationships? 3 marks question. Okay. As per SA 520 analytical procedures, examples of analytical procedures having consideration of relationships are
Among the elements of financial information that would be expected to conform to predictable pattern between financial information and relevant non-financial information such as payroll, cost, and number of employees. So where is it? Let us see in the chapter itself. So this was, the definition was divided into three parts. Comparison of entities' financial information with consideration of relationships with various other procedures. First part was comparison. Key example: comparable information for prior periods, anticipated results, and similar industry information. Now, what was asked in your exam question? Examples of analytical procedures having consideration of relationships. This one. This was a question asked in the examination. You could give this example as well. This will lend strength to your answer. Illustration 3. Tick. So people, that was November 22 question paper for you. So let us move to May 22 question paper. Essay 520 deals with the auditor's use of analytical procedures as substantive procedures known as substantive analytical procedures and as procedures near the end of the audit that assist the auditor in preparation of the financial statements. Correct, incorrect? Good, Himanshu, very good. So correct, incorrect? Darshan says correct. Diksha says incorrect. Himanshu says incorrect. Dikshita says correct. So we have mixed answers. Let us see. This is a tricky question actually. So the answer is incorrect. Essay 520 deals with the auditor's use of analytical procedures and procedure near the end of it as in forming an overall conclusion on the financial statements. It is not the auditor who has to prepare the statements. It says assist the auditor in preparation, not preparation, but forming an overall conclusion on the financial statements. This is where the catch was. Good. So you have to read the question very carefully, especially correct and incorrect. Chaliye. Next question. 4 marks. Tree Limited presented its financial statements for the financial year 2021-22 to its auditor for expressing an opinion thereon. The auditor, while carrying out the audit, started comparing various items of profit and loss account of the year under audit with previous financial years. What is the auditor trying to achieve by carrying out those comparisons? What is the auditor trying to achieve? 4 marks question. So, Analytical procedures use comparisons and relationships to assess whether account balances that are proper appear reasonable. The auditor of Tree Limited would achieve the following by carrying out the comparison stated in the question. From where does it carry the answer? Here. See. Comparisons. Purpose. The purpose. Let us move to the answer. If balances included in the statement of profit and loss of an entity are compared with those contained in the statement of profit that of previous period, it would be possible to find out the reasons for increase or decrease in the amount of profits of those years. By setting up certain expenses ratios on the basis of balances included in the statement of profit and loss, using ratios, if differences are found to be material, the auditor would ascertain the reasons. It would be possible to identify the existence of unusual transactions, amounts, ratios, and trends that may have other audit implications. Yes. 4 marks question. Okay. So you find certain questions in the exam where you don't have an idea from what chapter or which topic this question has been asked. One such question is this question of 3 marks. The approach to audit and extent of checking are undergoing a progressive change in favor of more attention towards the question of principle and controls with the curtailment of non-consequential routine checking. Discuss the given statement. Do you remember in which chapter we read this particular line or this particular statement? Can you recollect? Hanji, can you recollect? If you have read the study material of the previous 3 chapters and you were here with me, yes, Himanshu, right. Sampling, sitting in an exam and I'm like, ये किस चैप्टर से क्वेश्चन पूछा है, समझ में नहीं आ रहा है, तो पता नहीं ऑडिट किस चैप्टर में पढ़ा तो है पर याद नहीं आ रहा. अब इसको आप कैसे कनेक्ट करेंगे? अप्रोच टू ऑडिट and extent of checking are undergoing a progressive change in favor of more attention towards the question of principle and controls with a curtailment किसका? रूटीन चेकिंग की, जिसके कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस बहुत कोई खास निकलते नहीं थे हमारे लिए प्रोडक्टिव. हम प्रिंसिपल्स और कंट्रोल्स के ऊपर ज्यादा काम करें. देखिए, अगर आपने अच्छे से पढ़ा है चैप्टर और अच्छे से आपने हर लाइन को एनालाइज किया है, हर लाइन रटने वाली है, क्रैम करने वाली नहीं होती है. उसके पीछे का इंटेंट आपको पता होना चाहिए. और जब आप ऐसे कुछ क्वेश्चंस, मेरा व्हाट इज माय ऑब्जेक्टिव ऑफ using this question paper and suggested answers with you to make you understand how questions are asked in the exam.
It is not about important, what is important, what is not important. You should understand the intent behind that particular chapter. And these kinds of questions, किरण यही सर घुमाते हैं जब पता नहीं लगता कहाँ से पूछा गया है। पर यहाँ पे हम अपनी क्रिएटिविटी लेके आते हैं। ऑडिट की जितनी नॉलेज होती है सब यहाँ पे हम दिखा कर आते हैं। Let us go to the answer. It is upon audit sampling, वो कह रहा है रूटीन चेकिंग, डेली की चेकिंग नहीं, सैम्पलिंग को यूज, सैम्पलिंग, रिजॉर्ट टू सैम्पलिंग. See, whatever we read in the module, it is over here. 3 marks question. Sampling as an audit procedure. This is there in the notes shared with you as well as the study material. I hope you can understand why do you need to read the study material carefully. Okay, people, that is any doubts? Himanshu, it's like whatever it is there, it has been taken from the study material. I would suggest you just formulate your answer in a more effective manner. In points and with examples, you should justify your example answer, right? And since I'll share it with you, मोहित आउट ऑफ सिलेबस नहीं है. अजय कहता आउट ऑफ सिलेबस है. कमाल है. See over here. देखो स्टार्टिंग की चैप्टर की यहां से हो रही है. The approach to audit and the extent of checking are undergoing a progressive change in favor of more attention towards the question of principles and controls with the curtailment of non-consensual routine checking. ये क्वेश्चन पूछा गया आपको जहां से चैप्टर हमारा स्टार्ट हुआ था, ठीक. और उन्होंने वहां पे सजेस्टेड आंसर में सारा पैरा लिखा गया है, बट आपको एज इट इज सारा पैरा नहीं लर्न करना है, लिखना है. The intent behind asking this question is that हमारी shift principles and controls पर आ गई है rather than non-consequential routine checking. तो आप जस्ट समझ के इसको पॉइंट्स में अपने लैंग्वेज में लिखिए जो आपने पढ़ा है. रूटीन चेकिंग ट्रेडिशनल कैसे है, उसके क्या कॉन्स हैं, और सैम्पलिंग के क्या प्रॉज हैं, कैसे हम आज के डेट में इन कंसिडरेशंस को अपने अपने जो टाइम एंड एनर्जी वेस्ट करने के लिए यूटिलाइज कर सकते हैं. दैट इज व्हाट यू हैव टू राइट. So, Pathak Sahab, it is not essential that this full para you have to write as an answer, but important snapshots or points from this particular discussion. This is what you have to write in the 3 marks answer. No, Kiran, you will not get 0. Whatever, even if you can use your creativity, even if you cannot spot from what particular chapter or topic this question has been asked, just utilize your knowledge, basic audit knowledge. And I suppose it is not, infeasible for you to get even a 1 or 2 mark. These types of questions. मोहित पता लग गया ये आउट ऑफ सिलेबस नहीं है, सिलेबस के अंदर ही है. कहता आउट ऑफ सिलेबस है. ठीक, चलिए guys, any more doubts you would like to ask me, any more queries, anything else? Darshan, points are always better. I'll suggest you. Points are always better. But the points should be unique, different from each other, and should be the strongest points possible. भाई बहन नहीं होने चाहिए एक दूसरे के points. You know, right? Whatever you are telling in the first point, you are repeating the same in the second point in a different language. Or you're missing out on the strong points and just writing general audit points. That will not fetch you good marks. Whatever you are writing in points, your discussion in points, they should be separate, strong, and different from each other. अच्छा अच्छा मोहित ठीक है right. Okay, that was a lighter joke shared by you. Darshan would suggest always write in points, and it is very much necessary. You should at least go through the previous question papers. Okay, I would like to share something with you over here. How many of you have gone through the ISI website very carefully? Okay, can you see my screen? Are you able to see my screen? The ISI website is there and I'm moving towards the BOS knowledge portal. Huh? This is the BOS knowledge portal. Some important resources for you over here: syllabus, study material, ebooks, journal. Subject-wise capsules are the chapter charts, which I shared with you of chapter 6. Chapter chart, more colorful and table form chapter charts for every chapter over here. Subject capsules. So please be aware of the resources available to you for your exam preparation. MCQs and case scenarios booklet. You will get 30 marks MCQs and case scenario based questions like we did for chapter 6. We did for chapter 7. So it's a compendium over here. Do practice this. Previous year question papers only, not the answers. You have the answers to these question papers along with questions over here in suggested answers part. Mock test papers, any amendments or developments required for your attempt, revision test papers, very important. Now coming to the most important file for you people as provided by ICI, and I suppose almost only 5% of the students know about this file. You'll go to this part, suggested answers. Then you'll go to intermediate. Then this particular screen. Over here, at last, the Ramban file. Summary of examiner comments. What is this file? How many of you knew about this file over here? Summary of examiner comments. And how many of you have gone through this particular resource? Summary of examiner's comments. How many of you have gone through this resource? How many of you knew about this particular file? This is a file prepared by the institute on the basis of comments received by the examiners who have evaluated your answer sheets. The latest file over here we have is relating to December 21 attempt. You could take upon the audit question paper of December 21, could read it, could write down in short your answers. What would you write in this question? Then compare it with the examiner comments.
Examiners write over here, what did we expect of the student to write in this particular question? Many of the students committed this mistake. What mistake? You should know what mistake the student committed so that you should not commit that mistake. What did the question ask? You should be very well aware, because you might commit the same interpretation mistake while reading the question. How did they give marks? For what did they cut the marks? What were their expectations? This is all placed over here. See, I'll show you December 21, group 2. I think there is some problem with my Adobe, but you should go through this file. You should read it once for every subject. It is there. You should practice a variety of questions from the previous question papers, from RTPs, from MTPs, from case study digest, apart from the questions in the study material, and further to understand the mind of the examiner, to understand what the examiner wants from you in the answers. You should read at least 1 or 2 of such files relating to your previous such attempts. For example, you have over December 21 and July 21 question attempts, summary of examiner attempts available over here, comments. Whatever subject or group you are preparing, you should definitely go once, at least have a read. How do the examiners evaluate your answers? And you should be well known with the strategy of the examiner to give you marks, to award you marks. This is something which is a different preparation from just reading the books, learning the answers, cramming the answers, practicing the question. This is one of your strategies to prepare for the exam. Take. Make sure that you use all such resources available on the ICI website. Any more queries, or we should wind up the session, please? We are done with chapter 6, 7, and 8, and the next time we are going to start chapter 9. A lengthy but quite an interesting chapter and quite a practical chapter. Okay, great. Then wishing you a good night, bidding you a good night, and take care, prepare well, study well, and stay confident. We'll meet in some other chapter. Okay, everyone, take care. Bye-bye.